Should I talk about superhero television shows? Marvel, Star Wars. That's by Marvel, isn't it? They have, what do they call? Light swords, and there's Dark Vader, so named because he's dark, and Luke Starwalker, something like that. Okay, here is my opinion on the Andor television show. Star Wars is too childish for this sort of media. The setting drags it down, but also the real life setting drags down this sort of media as well. Star Wars is for children, the setting is for children. It's so basic and simple that it drags everything down. But also there is an advantage to it in the fact that you can make like this sort of, well, I guess the first season wasn't like a spy sort of thing. It was more like, you know, this one person's path to becoming a rebel sort of thing. But the second season is very much like a Born Identity sort of series, where it is basically just like a spy thriller from beginning to end, and that's where you really start to see the cracks in the Star Wars setting. However, it also has huge advantages because disconnecting this sort of spy thriller from the real world also let them do things with it and let them like believably frame the protagonists as actual like not bad people, whereas in real life when they make these sorts of spy thrillers, they always have to be like a British or an American intelligence agent who always has to be somehow in the right. You know, if you think about like James Bond is ruined by the constraints of the audience that it's made for, and also by the imperialistic motivations of its creators, because James Bond is like generic, old style British imperialism. Imperialism is good and based and sexy, and the enemies are always like, the other, the generic other of the imperialists. And then you get to like the more sophisticated, more modern spy thrillers like the Bourne movies, which is like more self-conscious American imperialism, but with women pilots every now and again, you know, that sort of thing. And the protagonist is like tortured by the things that he has to do. But ultimately, the US and, you know, the Western imperialist states are sort of framed as like wanting to do good, but having like benign and corrupting forces within them that do bad things that the protagonist like sort of has to struggle against. It's like more self-conscious, like sort of post 9/11, post Iraq War, post Afghan invasion sort of spy thriller. Like the Bourne movies especially are actually very good movies, especially like the action sequences and stuff, but they are incredibly dragged down by the fact that you cannot make a believable movie where the Americans are the good guys ever. It doesn't work. Unless you're just an indoctrinated American imperialist dumbass. So Andor sort of takes like the skill of the director of the Bourne movies, the creator of the Bourne movies, and gives him like a blank slate to work with where that sort of baggage is all gone. And he does a very good job of it. Like, it's very good, and the only bad part about it is that it's still Star Wars. So you remove the baggage of spy thrillers being tied to real world, having to frame like the Western countries as the good guys in some way, in some roundabout way every time. But you also introduce like the Star Wars setting, which is incredibly simplistic if you think about it for 2 seconds. The bad guys is like the most stereotypically like cartoonish fascistic empire in the entire universe, when in the real world now, the analogs of the real world today, imperialism is a lot more complex than that and sold in much different ways than the like overt Nazi style imperialism of like the Empire in Star Wars. The rebellion is also incredibly unbelievable and stupid, even though he did as good of a job of it as he could have given the source material, because like a bunch of like a ragtag group of like liberals and like supposedly terroristic extremists, but all they're fighting for is the restoration of, in of itself, an incredibly problematic liberal democracy. That's all they're fighting for. They all want to bring back like the Republic, which was a representative democracy, like a generic liberal style representative democracy, which like famously collapsed because it like fought against a like separatists who they were trying to prevent from separating from their liberal democracy. Now, obviously, I know that the separatists were sort of, you know, manipulated behind the scenes by the evil Sith man with his mind control powers, but still, that's the root of the conflict here. So it's like a decaying liberal democracy turns into a Nazi state. And also the passage of time here, by the way, is fucking ludicrous. Like, I didn't know this beforehand because I was like, okay, when does this take place? How long has this all been going on for? The Empire lasted 20 years. The Empire in Star Wars lasted 20 fucking years. Actually, no, I think it's 13 years. I think I might actually be overestimating that too. I don't remember exactly, but it's totally unbelievable. They set up this vast, sprawling fascist empire. They reformed everything to be fascist all across the galaxy in 20 years? No, I'm sorry. There's no fucking way. He did a good job with what is his name? Tony Gilroy. He did a great job with what they gave him. I'm just saying he's really held back by this totally unbelievable setting that is incredibly simplistic, way too simplistic for the story that I feel like he wanted to tell. It's still a very good show. Like, it's easily the best. Like, the second season is the best spy series or movie I've watched in an extremely long time, easily. The first season is good as well, but I feel like the second season really played to the strengths of the director. But what it is really good at doing is sort of humanizing like resistance, like showing you that these people do things that are actually pretty objectively morally wrong, but that are strategically correct for a greater good, very often. And it doesn't judge them for it, doesn't want you to judge them for it. If anything, it wants you to judge them positively for it. And that is like the main good thing about it, like the main actual message take away from it, because the actual like fight against the evil empire is extremely simplistic, though it's not the fault of the creators that it's like, it's just the fault of the Star Wars setting. Like there's going to be spoilers in here, obviously. I'm going to like give you an example of what I mean here. There's like one part where like the main spy master guy, by the way, this is another thing that just is totally unrealistic as well, that the rebellion is like basically funded and then carried out by a total of 2 people. There's 2 people who really are behind the scenes who make everything happen. And this, you know, it's not how things work or ever going to work in real life. So you have like, you know, the main spy master guy who's like this incredible, like all-powerful, all-knowing, like totally unrealistic character who controls like most of the most important rebellion activities from behind the scenes. And there is a point where like his main source in like the Empire Intelligence Bureau comes in with like this total bombshell. And this guy, he wants like safe passage. He wants safe passage for his family because the Empire are onto him and they're going to kill him or whatever. And Lufin, who's the name of the spy master guy, he can easily do that for him. He can easily get him out. You know, there's probably some risk to it, but this guy easily has the capacity to do that. But he just kills him instead. He just kills him immediately on the spot. And that's the morally incorrect thing to do, because this guy had done so much for them. Without him, they would have been fucked. This one source, they would have been fucked. It's incredibly morally wrong for him to kill that guy, but strategically it's the best thing for him to do, because that's the only way that he can be sure that this guy will not be intercepted and won't be interrogated and won't give up everything. It's the safest thing for him to do for like the greater good was just to kill him on the spot, and he did it. And this is the sort of things that rebellions do all the time. Like think about like Hamas in Gaza killing Israeli informants, something that the international media always frames as terrible and wrong. And it's like, is it perhaps morally weird? I mean, maybe, but what the fuck else are they supposed to do? And that's a less ambiguous situation than the one in Andor that I was talking about, because that guy, he hadn't even been exposed as a source yet. I mean, they were onto him, but he could have reasonably gotten him out. He probably had a very high chance of being able to get him out. He didn't even try though. He just killed him because he had no loyalty to the people. He had loyalty to the cause. And he said, and if to this, you know, the Lufin guy, that sort of thing was what had to be done for the greater good. And there's these sorts of moments all the time in the show where people do shitty things that like are perhaps a violation of someone's individual rights, but that are totally understandable from the standpoint of, is this the right thing to do if we are going to actually succeed here and get rid of this fascist empire? So that is like one of the main strengths of Andor, in that it constantly has these sorts of moments, and it shows you like how and why people might be pushed to rebel or to resist. However, those parts are slightly dragged down by the fact that the Empire is so just cartoonishly and obviously evil that it fails to communicate the nuances of actually existing real-world imperialism today properly, which, you know, as I've been saying, isn't the fault of the director. Because obviously, resistance against the fucking Empire is obviously justified. But resistance against the, you know, United States of America is obviously justified in real life as well. And yet in real life, the United States of America is not quite as obvious with its imperialism as the Empire is. And they did try to introduce elements of this to the show, like the propaganda and stuff sounds very much like real world propaganda. But then you also have to think, this Empire is all controlling. Why would they like there's one moment where they massacre a bunch of people in a plaza, and they bait them into it when they have like false flag snipers shooting their own soldiers to try and blame them on those people. And it's like, this would not happen in this world. It would happen in the real world, sure. Like the US would do this for sure. Or like, you know, the Egyptian government did stuff like this like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Stuff like that. But in world, this is unbelievable. It's totally unbelievable that the Empire would have to do a false flag. All they would do is they would shoot those people, kill them, and then they would just lie about it. They wouldn't need to do a false flag for that to justify the genocide. There's also another totally unbelievable character, Mon Mothma, who is like an imperial senator who's also secretly funding like the spy master guy behind the scenes. And no one like this exists, okay? No one like this exists. Anyone like her would have been subsumed by the system long before she got to this point. She's like supposed to be like an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez type person, except in real life, people like her do not fund rebellions. They work to stifle them and to lead people away from them. So I just wanted to mention that because I found that a completely unbelievable character also saw some people like comparing that character like Nancy Pelosi, like she's supposed to be like a liberal reformist type character, but she's not. I mean, she funds a fucking rebellion. She funds a rebellion with her personal wealth, her family's wealth behind the scenes. The point that I want to make is that in the real world, no fucking senator for an empire is doing that, okay? Never in history has anything like that happened. So no, just a totally unrealistic character. And a very contradictory character as well, because she's presented as like this sort of liberal, like really Democratic Party sort of character, really disconnected from the rebellion, who is really against like using violence except when it's necessary. And then, but she's also like funding the whole rebellion behind the scenes, and it's basically because of her that it can succeed, and it's just totally unrealistic and bullshit. And don't even get me started in the way that they present the characters who actually do like use violence often, like Saw Gerrera. He's presented like as a fucking crazy guy, and obviously from the name you can tell he's inspired by Che Guevara. Like they intentionally wrote the liberal senator as the rational one, and the actual like guy who's been resisting the whole time via violent means as a crazed terrorist. So that's a very intentional choice. I don't know if these characters were set in stone before Andor got to them, though. I don't know if I don't care to look either. But it's, there's clearly a choice there to choose to frame like the more reformist, though not really character as the rational one, and the more like radical character as a crazed drug addict. So yeah, that is my take on the television show Andor. I think it's good. I think it would have been better if it was set in a sci-fi setting like that wasn't burdened by real-world politics, but there wasn't Star Wars. I think it would have been better with a blank slate to work with. It's dragged down by the simplicity of the Star Wars setting, but it was very refreshing to see like a really well done sort of spy thriller in the second season that has half decent messages, and that also does a lot to like show that resistance is in reality difficult. It's gritty. You have to do a lot of morally questionable things to succeed, and the demand that like resistance groups abide by the standards set up. The standards of morality that are specifically set up by the very empires that they fight, or otherwise be like totally discarded, is very much tackled in Andor, because it shows all these different like fragmented resistance groups as often doing very bad things, but ultimately being far more justified than their opponents. And that is like the most important thing about it, really. Aside from it just being a decent series. It's just dragged down way too much by the whole, we are fighting the most generic, obviously evil, fascistic empire in history thing. That, and it's dragged down by being like, the enemies are cartoonishly evil, and what they are fighting for is so cartoonishly not radical and milquetoast. Basically, they want the empire, except they want the emperor to be replaced with like a prime minister who's voted in by the Senate and the parliament or whatever. That's what they're fighting for. Give me a break. It's funny too, because fucking Saw Gerrera, who's like the radical drug addict, crazy terrorist guy, at least that's how he's presented in this, he says straight up explicitly, he wants to restore the Republic. That's his goal. He's a crazed maniac, violent terrorist, drug addict, and his goal isn't like, I want communism. It's not like I want socialism. It's not like I want anarchism. It's I want to restore the Republic. Give me a fucking break! Anyway, it's still good, despite its flaws. It's still good, don't get me wrong. I just wanted to talk about it in a little rant, like here. Even though all the bad things that I've said about it, they are flaws that they would not be there, I feel, if it was an original sci-fi setting, rather than the childish setting of Star Wars. Like, the creators did a great job with the cards that they were given, and I feel like it probably couldn't realistically be any better, given the fact that it's literally a fucking Disney property. So, it's good, but it's limited in what they can do. But I mean, I hope that the guy who made it, Tony Gilroy, thinks about like what he did well there, and maybe makes like an original property where he's not so limited by the childish setting of Star Wars. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about the whole... Yeah, I have to add this in there at the end. I totally forgot about the whole thing where the Republic had like this cast of like insane religious child abducting monks who were just there. And everyone like had to accept their prominent role in this system. And they just like had like special rights. Like when you think about it, it's a really fucking weird form of government. And I think George Lucas really struggled hard to justify, like retroactively, the weird world that he had created in the original trilogy in the prequels. No, it's just so dumb. Like the Jedi are good. The Jedi are fucking maniacs. And Andor specifically is a good series, in part because there's no Jedi in it. Because it's not like dragged down by the childish shit that is the Jedi that make no sense within the setting.